everyone. Thanks for sticking around for us. Last but not least, CEO panel. I don't think anybody on this panel needs any introductions. You've seen their names. We have a distinguished group. I think, Vijaya, if I'm not mistaken, we're going to allow 15 minutes for questions at the end.
We have 1 hour, 15 minutes. You can do what you like. 4:30 we close.
Okay. And when Vijaya says 4:30 we close, 4:30 we close. Okay, so we have a lot of topics to cover on this panel, so let's just get right into it. Starting with Sam. I think every year we're on this panel and we say, you know, media is a dynamic and shifting landscape. This year is probably winner of the Understatement of the Year award, if we talk about that. We have not only an economic downturn, not only a shift in advertising to digital, but also a lot of instability geopolitically. How do we survive 2018 as a media business in this kind of environment?
Thank you, Karim. Can you hear me? Okay. Stability. Okay, now you can hear. So I am not going to perform intellectual gymnastics and pretend that what has happened in the last week has not been a big blow to our morale. It has. I would also observe that in this neck of the woods, being a successful media company brings as many risks as being unsuccessful. And I also believe that NBC is a prized asset, a jewel in any crown, and it is because we are professional, profitable, and prized. Now, I don't know what's going to happen, or I don't know exactly what happened elsewhere, but I am crystal clear on what the team in Dubai, in Beirut, in our Saudi offices in Cairo, in what we are doing over the coming quarters. And I believe that is all we can do. So if you'll forgive me for just giving you a quick spiel, but in December we will launch the region's largest and safest kids VOD. Wizzo, our games portal, has broken all records this year, and in 2018 we'll be publishing our own games. Shahid.net, 10 million unique users this year, 26 million unique users in Ramadan, and in 2018 we'll be commissioning our own exclusive content for Shahid. On TV, we've just finished Top Chef. Project Runway comes in December. We have Voice and Voice Kids. We launched The Wall, and we anticipate maintaining ratings at the same level we've had them to date. Our Turkish company, which Fadi will know, currently we have a production company in Turkey. It produced the most successful Turkish TV drama ever, Traitor. It's now launched on NBC, and we have the largest show in Turkey next year on NBC. So it's business as usual. Now, for the 2,800 employees at NBC, we wish Sheikh Waleed all the best. In front of the industry, I would say we will be competing as strongly as ever, and you may not wish us luck, but we will be out there and fighting as strong as we can. And whatever the circumstances, it was part of the deal in this part of the region that we face this kind of instability, and we will bear it like we have borne previous risks.
Fighting words from Sam. You've been one of the people who have also, through many downturns and different economic models, have managed to prove that sort of the FTA business model works. Are you still as adamantly supportive of an advertising-supported business in media in the region?
I thought after that, hello, can you hear me? Yeah. It's impossible to follow that. Literally,
you have my week, you can follow it.
Literally and figuratively. But apparently we are. And yes, to answer your question, Karim, yes, we do believe that the region, a lot of talk has been done that this region is waiting for the next explosion of pay TV. The gap between the 9 to the 100, 9% of pay TV homes penetrated to the 100. And therefore, the actual resurgence will be only of pay TV. I don't think it will be only of pay TV. If pay TV was to be a success in this part of the world, it started the same time as in India, which is about 27 years ago. And the penetration levels will be different. The way the local region consumes content is different. So to answer your question, I'm very, very supportive of the ad-supported model for running businesses. And our business, similar to what we saw on the video clip before we just got here, is going to be more about active engagement. Active engagement with spenders, active engagement with consumers, and we do believe that an active engagement with platforms. So it is going to be a year of, I can begin to understand what Sam is talking about when he talks about the fact that the job description came with the whole instability angle, any which ways. I don't think this region is any different in that sense. I also am looking at some regions in Asia. Ups and downs in the media industry are very similar. Maybe not to that level, yes, but for sure. But ad-supported is the way to go, because active engagement and eyeballs is where everybody's running.
Correct me if I'm wrong. By all accounts and industry talk, this has been a 30% plus down year for most, if not more. Advertisers seem to be disappearing left and right. How is this going to be business as usual in the face? Forget the instability. That's already a big, big extra factor. Fine, it's outside our control. But even economically, when we were in a region where very few players were able to make it work with an advertising-supported business. Sure. And pay always seems to have this struggle with raising the bar in terms of how many people are willing to pay. Where's the path forward?
I think even Martin's going to be talking about how there are challenges relating to pay, but fact still remains that we've lost about $1 billion of advertising revenue in the last 2 years as an industry. 2016 was bad. 2017 is worse. So your question is right, how are you going to survive 2018? It's being very, very fiscally prudent. It's being very, very closely targeting. And it's going to be more about collaborations and consolidation. Now more than ever. Literally now more than ever. Pay TV is, paying for content is growing. Let me put it this way. We keep confusing pay TV with paying for content. Paying for content is going to grow. You have a lot of the Flixes in town. Net, ICI. We were on a panel 2 weeks ago when we were discussing the same. So paying for content is growing. But that doesn't mean the cost of the eyeball is going to be declining from the client or the brands who are spending for that eyeball.
Can I, sorry, sure. I don't want to, it sounds like being defensive on free-to-air, and I want to be more kind of positive. Again, in Saudi Arabia, free-to-air TV advertising is 4 times undervalued compared to per capita countries elsewhere. And that's the case, and so there is room to grow. Why is that? There was never the research. We are close to having people meters. With people meters, the advertisers will invest with more confidence. We're at a low in the business cycle. Anyone would expect, as the business cycle picks up, and particularly in Saudi, as the economy diversifies and gets more competitive, that's exactly what advertisers want. And there will be a battle for market share, and the advertising industry will continue to use TV. And we're seeing now with technology able to divide up different markets. We're targeting North Africa. We've got Egypt. We're in Saudi. There is a very robust case for free-to-air TV. And yes, it's come down, but markets come down and they go back up again. I don't think this is a gut blow for the industry. This is something we will deal with, and we will come back strong.
I'd like to come back to the point on distribution and individual markets, if I may. But we have 2 very strong views on free-to-air. Sanjay, last time you and I were on this panel, you basically said free-to-air is going to be dead soon. We're all shifting to pay. There's a huge shift. It was at the time when BN was beginning to approach free-to-air channels. Where's the shift to pay?
Can you hear me? Yeah. I never said that. I don't know why you manufactured that. Considering we also have a pie in Fox in free-to-air. I mean, we have never dismissed any segment. We are a classic example of a slight part of a leg in the free-to-air, even if it's factual, and growing for us. and a large part of the leg and the body in the pay segment. And for us, yes, we took a call a couple of years back to roll back our free-to-air model, which was clearly not working for us, and we had no egos in claiming it from rooftops that it wasn't working for us for a variety of reasons. And we rolled back it into pay. That made the industry follow that model for quite some time, and a lot of people in the industry did follow that model. Is it settling? I think those elements of inertia are still on. We found great ways of launching more pay TV products. Last year in April, we launched 3 Fox-branded channels, which have found widespread distribution across most of the pay platforms. This year, we have again launched 3 more products, Fox-branded, one of them being an Arabic product called Fox Ruwayat, which gets dramas from around the world and very soon from the region and dubbed in Arabic. And we also launched a kids block for the first time in the world, a National Geographic kids block that very soon is going to become a channel around the world. So for us, business grows. We are very typically Fox. We are always hungry. We are always hunting. We never sit tight. We keep looking at opportunities. And for us, the debate, and let me reiterate that, the debate is not free-to-air versus pay. The debate is content, collaboration, and consumer. Whatever falls within the 3 C's is very clearly us and Fox, and we'll keep pursuing that.
Okay. Sachin.
But I would like to see what I said last year about free-to-air being dead. I think these statements, sorry to interrupt, these statements are made by people who probably have very little idea of media. So
Reed Hastings keeps saying linear's dead. He just changes the number of years every year.
Nothing is dead. Nothing dies.
Sachin, from a perspective of an outside investor, I know we have Fox and Z as well, but from an outside investor's perspective, how would you characterize the current climate? Are you still happy to be here, and do you want to grow in this market?
I think we've been here in the region for about 6.5 years, and we've actually been the last major broadcaster from the South Asian stable to enter here. And I think we've always recognized that we are targeting a niche demographic, a demographic which, while it might be a very large segment of the population in certain markets, but that demographic has historically always been under-indexed and undervalued. We've always believed that we have premium content, and so we've taken the conscious call of putting that content on pay. So I think in terms of our thinking, we remain optimistic about the region. I think what we've done over the last 6.5, 7 years is that we've realized that while the pay market itself has not really grown for us, we've realized the need to diversify our revenue. So we've set up a successful ad sales operation. We went beyond that into localized content, into setting up a live events vertical, into syndicating more and more of our content to broadcasters based here. And over time, I think we've grown our operation from a single channel to about a 22-channel operation. We've grown our distribution extensively across Africa. Today we make, even as a niche player, we make close to about 30% of our top line from localized initiatives like live events and local content, etc. So the downturn notwithstanding, I think we remain gung-ho about the fundamental appetite for content in the region among our demographic. And moving forward, you'll see us doing a lot more work in the SWOT space on our own, in collaboration with our platform partners. And, so overall, we are quite positive about the region, and we remain that way.
Martin, we're talking about pay. Sachin sets an optimistic tone, but he prefaces it with, there hasn't been growth in the sector. You're at the heart of the sector. You've had some interesting competitive dynamics over the past few years. What's your view on how pay is progressing?
I think that trying to separate the success of paid-for content from free-to-air success misses the point, because I think that actually what this region is facing across the entire media industry is a lack of respect for intellectual property rights, and I think that it's incumbent upon content owners to take the lead for that. I have to say that that's not been our experience. I think that Sam and us at OSN have taken the lead in trying to pull together the region's anti-piracy efforts. We at OSN suffer egregious damage from broadcasters like Dish, who operate illegally within the MENA region. And we are continuing to fight that with all the legal means at our disposal. But quite frankly, we need more help from content owners, from channel owners and channel providers, because it's only if we as an entire marketplace begin to really focus on intellectual property right protection that we will all grow our businesses in a profitable way. Otherwise, what you'll simply see is uneconomic prices being paid for content, which in the short term, I'm sure, is to the benefit of those content owners, but it doesn't create a sustainable business moving forward. So there needs to be greater regulation, there needs to be greater education, and quite frankly, there needs to be greater involvement from content owners and from channel providers in trying to prevent this activity, which is damaging the region as a whole. It doesn't matter if you're going to get people meters into the marketplace if most of the viewing is done through illegal means.
If I interpret you correctly, are we saying that our biggest problem in uptake of pay is piracy?
That's one of our problems. It's not the only problem that we face. I think that the development of infrastructure through the region is something that we need to see sustained. We want to see more IPTV networks being built out by partner telcos across the region. That's some place that we can provide our channels to, our suites of services. We want to be able to distribute our content bundles to as wide an audience as possible, and we need other people to invest if that's going to be, the full potential is going to be maximized. For us at OSN, we have to focus on making sure that we are rigorous in providing the best customer service that we possibly can, the best customer experience, trying to make sure that we provide a good balance between rented rights, which, frankly, are what they are, rented, so you can't rely on them, and making sure that we build an owned content business, because that's the only way in which we'll have a sustainable future in the long run.
Is it correct to say that in terms of what the plans you announced a few years ago with the Arabic channels and so on, that you've retrenched somewhat, though, in the original content production as opposed to the original ambition? Because it seemed to be more about channels and a lot of Arabic content and a lot of presence, and now it's gone to less but more quality. Where are you in the content production aspect of things?
We certainly haven't retrenched. We've invested more each year. Would I like to see us do more? Yes, I would, and that's certainly the plan moving forward. But there are a number of headwinds that we have to face, and obviously we have to make sure that we balance our investment portfolio in such a way that we deliver a return for our shareholders, because we are a commercially driven organization, and that is our primary focus. That's what we've got to do. So we have to make harder decisions than perhaps other organizations.
Terry, we seem to have two groups of entities represented. So we have either pay platforms that are trying to get as many subscribers as they can. We have large networks that are appealing to all the segments in the marketplace. You've adopted a different approach. You obviously have more niche content. Your business model relies a lot not only on sort of advertising or subscriptions. You have gone into merchandising. You've gone into events. Is this basically how things play out? Do you think if you're a smaller player, then you really need to, we have Z talking about advertising sales and getting into, we have Viacom talking about events as well. If you're a smaller player and you need to be profitable or viable, is this the only way to go?
I don't know so much about being a small player anymore, maybe 7 years ago, but yeah, I think having a diversified portfolio of revenues help. So in light of 2017 not being a vintage year for the ad sales market, but we've managed to consistently grow our business in the last 7 years, and I think while some of the departments don't necessarily grow as per the rest, as a full portfolio, there's always a good balance. Being part of one of the largest theme parks in the region pays off. Being part of a big retail industry obviously pays off as well. But even in terms of advertising, I think as our partners, ATL over here, continue to deliver for us, and being in a niche market of advertising, we didn't take such a hit like people expect us to take. So, but supporting what Sam said and what Martin said is, I think the market remains very under-monetized in several areas, and whether it's pay TV penetration or ad sales undervaluation of per capita. So we have a very positive outlook on the next few years, and we continue to see that, you know, whether it's the Middle East or Turkey, we can further invest and bring new products and bring more content and actually grow our business. So yeah, it doesn't seem such a negative outlook after all.
So I'm going to change my perspective and think the world is a rosier place. There's unicorns flying everywhere, pink elephants in the room. You're all so rosy. Is this corporate determination, or are there fundamentals? I want to go back to a point that Sam, I don't know, I'm not going to share the details because you might not want to, but at we were in a meeting some time ago, and you gave an offer of collaboration to other broadcasters. You're free to whether you want to share that or not. What I would like to know is, did you see a lot of response to that offer of collaboration? Because this was basically you saying, let's forget the competition. We have a greater threat, and that digital is an issue in terms of ad dollars going out of the region. Was there a warm response to this?
No, so my observation was that the next wave of competition in this market is not probably in this room, but it's from the international players, and we all know who they are, who are coming in. The costs of their platform are amortized in another 170 countries, and they're coming here with very cheap overheads to take the advertising dollars from us. And whilst before we had the luxury of competing between ourselves, now we face an external player or players, and that's always an opportunity. It's an opportunity to come together. And the offer that I put out there on behalf of NBC was, we have a platform on Shahid, which is already generating, as I said, 10 million unique users a month. If people would like to come and put their content onto this platform, then we don't want your money. Come and make your advertising dollars on the platform. Yes, for sure, the platform will get stronger and we will have a benefit from this one. But I maintain that it's better that if we can find some form of collaboration. And on the back of that, I've had, I think, 3 serious approaches on this one. And we're trying to work out models on how we do it.
Can we have a show of hands from the rest of you? How many of you are willing to put your content on Shahid? Sanjay, Mukund? Okay,
We've had a separate conversation. To be honest, I had a separate conversation right from when I joined OSN. One of the observations I made over a year ago was that the exact point, which is that the great FANGA is coming, and in fact FANGA is here. And unless everybody in this region actually starts cooperating and develops partnerships in such a way that mutually benefits the people who have been here for a long time, then those other outside corporations will simply take the eyeballs. So I've been a firm advocate of greater partnerships from all the media entities within the region, and Sam and I have had many conversations trying to find some way of being able to make that work.
So Martin, wise words. I think everybody on the panel in the room is going to agree that this makes perfect sense. Do you think it can actually happen?
In a way, Karim, I think
we've known this for a while. It's not new information. So why hasn't anything happened?
No, the renewed success of Hulu is telling everybody that better stand up and collaborate, and that's where major studios are coming in, right? Fox, Disney, etc. And as I said, collaboration is the only route forward. You cannot do everything on your own, right? And we are talking. I mean, you asked for a raise of hands. We will talk, and we will want to be a part of a so-called larger platform where our content derives value to the consumer. But much before that, there is a bigger issue, which I think everybody amongst us has realized and is realizing around the world, and that is the power of consumer. I think we had, for a large part of time, decided to give to the consumer what we thought was the right approach in content. But suddenly, with all the stuff that is available there, online, the Facebooks, the social media, the consumer is turning back and saying, no, you got to behave the way I want my content to be served. And I think the industry generally, not only here, but even in Southeast Asia or somewhere else, is trying to now regain that whole fact that we have lost a lot to the same consumer for whom we dished a lot of stuff and yet didn't know that he is not going to consume it this way. So that is the consumer is forcing us to collaborate too. Let's accept that fact.
Okay. Still, I agree.
And
where is it?
So the big daddy in the room has to call the smaller ones, and let's all collaborate.
Already gave an amazing
so
offer.
we have raised our hands. I think we have raised our hands.
Maybe.
It's fun to run this business workshop in front of 300 people, but it is slightly more complicated than just doing with you. But
give us a timeline. Give us a timeline. How long do you think it takes broadcasters in the region to figure out that working together is better than
I had one conversation last week with someone who said they had started a similar conversation in Europe and had started the conversation in February and had launched last week. Okay. So, you know, we've all been through these kind of, you know, my experience is there's a kind of joint venture-itis that we all get. It's very easy to start conversations about joint ventures. It's incredibly difficult to negotiate them through. But what's happening is, faced with the enemy, a lot of that becomes much simpler. And so this corporation had done a complex deal in 6 to 7 months. So that is a benchmark which I think we could usefully look to.
So Mukund, the headline, Sam Barnett predicts in 7 months you're all going to be on a platform. I'm just teasing.
Well, I think.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean.
You've been smiling throughout.
No, I mean, I'll tell you what. So there are collaborations in Europe. Sam was forthright enough to put the offer out 2 weeks ago. Maybe the way business is done in Europe is a little different, and I think he's absolutely right when he says that there are challenges. He called it, I think, the joint venture-itis. We love, in Asia and this part of the world, we love the phrase joint venture. I really abhor it, because it's the surefire recipe for disaster. The minute you begin to say joint venture, there is nothing joint, and therefore the venture never takes off. So what should it be called? So I prefer to be a little more amorous and say, let's start dating. It's a lot more beneficial. You can have a conversation, but as long as the goal is very clearly defined in the beginning. And I think to that extent, there is clarity among the region. Whether winter's coming or the enemies at the gates or not, I'm not too sure. But I can say that there are opportunities and challenges, and to reiterate what Sanjay said, the biggest challenge today is not content, it's the consumer. Is this inherent rebellion of being fed 45 years of, I will tell you to watch at 8:30, and someone saying, guess what, I don't want to watch it at 8:30. That's the biggest challenge. Is technology going to, one of the points on the discussion also is technology going to make us reach out to the consumer more? For sure. 10 years we've been talking about narrowcasting versus broadcasting. The satellite operators have always kind of explained that yes, this can be done. Today the telecom operator is explaining how it can be done. So I believe it's possible. 6 months is too far. I believe it has to be done a lot more faster, provided the clear-cut case of joint venture is not on the table.
Yeah, and to be clear, what I said 2 weeks ago was, let's stick clear of the joint ventures. If we can just get a simple contract, this is something we can do in weeks. But the natural reaction in this part of the world is, let's launch a joint venture, and then 3 years later, we're still kind of swapping emails. I said, look, here's a platform, let's use it, and on the back of that, people have come forward.
I think it's definitely something we're talking about now that we weren't talking about last year, so we'll take that as a positive step forward. Yeah.
Kareem, I have a slightly contrarian view. So, Martin was talking about FANG earlier. Now, if you take the example of the US, which is perhaps the most mature content and pay market in the world, while you have a scenario where traditional platforms have all lost 1.5%, 2% of their base every year, even for the last 2 years, 2, 3 years, even in that scenario, you have traditional platforms and broadcasters who are all, with the exception of Hulu perhaps, they're all going at it alone. So you have, you have a Showtime, you have a CBS, you have a Disney, you have a Dish with Sling, you have HBO now. All of them are doing their own, B2C venture of their own. And I think between all of them put together, they have almost have about 9.5 million subscribers on their own OTT now. And Disney's just made announcements for an ESPN and Disney branded OTT. So I think the contrarian view is that while at one level all of us will recognize the need for collaboration, however, as broadcasters or as content owners, we have traditionally always been in the B2B space, wherein we have relied on other people to make that last mile possible. And now in a scenario where you suddenly see that it is actually, there is limitless potential of being able to reach the consumer directly and to create that value for your business of being B2C. And obviously at a larger level, the kind of valuation that it adds to your company, the kind of shareholder value it gives you, etc., etc. So keeping all those considerations in mind, to my mind, it'll take a while before, before serious players come together and collaborate for a B2C venture. I think at least for the next 2 or 3 years, all the large players across the world, and perhaps here as well, will all try and go at it alone. And if you see some of the recent announcements that some of the gentlemen here have done, they've all been, they've all been ventures where they've decided to go at it single-handedly.
Well, it's not as easy as you describe it. I mean, for us, if you want to go B2C, it's probably 10 years, 15 years down the line. I mean, these gentlemen face enough challenges on their own, irrespective of the other telcos and all these guys. As a company, we are taking a lot of B2C initiatives in other parts of the world to bring them to the Middle East, where piracy, where payment gateways have all these permanent issues. It's quite a big bet to go out there and say, yes, we're going to do that. Rather, what Sam is proposing, or what Martin is talking about, or the rest of you, is I think consolidation is the best way to do it, and whether it's joint venturitis or anything else, I don't think any of the panelists here haven't had conversations separately or confidentially about parts of collaboration in some form of the business itself, not necessarily to declare in front of all the crowd and say, yes, this is what we're doing and that's how we're going to do it, but B2C certainly doesn't strike me as, there is people doing B2C, there is people doing B2C. If we want to jump on that ship, that's a smart decision, an active decision that we can all engage in. I'm not from the view that we should do it alone.
Sam, in his intro, mentioned a kids product,
yes,
which I assume is an OTT. Kids, you mentioned the kids, so I assume it's an OTT or a kids product. Presumably, Turner elsewhere around the world has an OTT kids product. If that's coming here, this is a very perfect example. If it comes to the region, we have a product that's going out, you have a product that's being brought in. This is B2C. How do you think about it? Do you think about it on your own, or do you think about it together?
Yeah, certainly, a collaboration sounds much more appealing than doing it on our own. I think, in the Nordic, we just launched with HBO. You're
going after the same consumer.
Exactly.
Can they pay twice, or are they going to pick one of you, or how is it going to work?
No, but there's a lot of platforms out there in terms of direct-to-consumer. So, if we collaborate with one, it doesn't mean that we're going to own it with one. So when we launched in the Nordic, for example, with HBO, although HBO is a sister company and already has north of 1 million subscribers, we did keep those contracts open so that we could launch the same product with other platforms as well. Because it's kind of not really logical for one platform to dominate all the subscribers in one market. So whilst we will bring the product in here and we will peddle it in 2018 and 19, taking an exclusive form of the product with one single partner is probably not how we will do it.
Karim, you're playing a beautiful Indian father and mother whose job is to find a bridegroom for her daughter and kind of, arranged marriage. The answer to you is yes, if we have a product and there is a platform available and ready, we will want to go and be a part of the platform. We are also trying to launch a kids channel in a factual genre. If Sam says, yes, let's go on together, we will go together, if that is the answer you're looking at. Now, the point is, you're wanting a definitive time period. Well, in India, it's all about stars, right? If they don't mix, you don't have a marriage.
Weddings and all sorts, okay. We need a curtain. I think there's going to be some lovely things coming. Martin, you're smiling through this. You've just recently revamped your OTT offering. You have Wavo, which looks great in terms of content. I'm not sure all this talk of being together on one platform sounds great from your perspective.
No, it sounds great. I mean, I'm still waiting to sell Shahid Plus in conjunction with Wavo, and that's a conversation that we've been trying to have for months. So I'm not sure what stops a simple commercial deal like that happening either. As I say, I think that cooperation and partnership is the only way in which we're going to be able to move forward. Very happy to do it at any point. We can stop this and go and do a deal in the back room now. It would take us about 5 minutes.
No need for curtains now.
I'm all ears. I've even got a pen, so it's great. But it's just I do find that things go round and round and round and round and round, and we're having to focus on doing our own thing because there's no other option for us. Wavo is out there. It's a great OTT service. It combines the best of the linear channels that we offer on a streaming basis with all the usual box set video on demand stuff that people expect from a streaming service. We're in the process of doing all the integration deals with all the telcos that we need to get done. It's not a simple process. Hard work that needs to be put in place across all the region, and then making sure that all the different methods of payment providers are integrated. But once it's there, we're going to have to make sure that we roll that out as aggressively as we possibly can. And I repeat, we are open to any partnership suggestions and bundled selling that benefits both parties and the consumer with anybody at any time. We've got some other things that any irons in the fire. Unfortunately, I guess we will end up probably doing deals more likely with Fanga before we'd end up doing deals here. And that, I think, is a shame for the region, but that's the way it will have to be.
But isn't that the same path that all the news publishers are now regretting following? Isn't that the same path where you get to the point where you're so dependent on Fang for distribution that you regret having given them anything in the first place?
Do you think everybody knows what Fanga is, or should we explain that?
I didn't know what Fang was half an hour ago, so that's a good point. So Fang is Facebook, Amazon.
Fang is a big beast with teeth.
Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, I think, right?
And Apple.
And Apple.
Yeah.
Now it's Fang. So Fang is basically the threat that all these gentlemen should be worried about, which I think they say they are all definitely worried about, but then the step from going from how we do business today to cooperating against this common enemy is the transition period. So if you think you're going to end up doing deals with Fang first, isn't that what the mistake that happened in the publishing industry? Why would you go down that route?
Well, it's not anything that we're going to be afraid of because our business has got great content rights at the moment, which we have for many years and we'll be able to exploit for many years. And at the same time, we'll develop our own IP business. And we'll end up offering a combined bundle to customers that will give them the best of what they want.
Yeah, I think your mic is breaking up.
Karim, also to add to that point, while it is important to be very aware, in a way, a little scared of the Fang and Fangay or whatever you want to call it, I think inherently where they have scored, in addition to data mining, and that's why data mining companies are probably going to have more valuation than media companies overnight or telecom companies. But the one point that they have really struck a chord is on distribution, the way they were available on day one across. For example, when Netflix goes 121 markets, then it suddenly says, I'm 100 million subscribers or so on and so forth. It is that universality of the distribution which is the biggest threat to anybody's business, whether sitting here or not. And that is what is going to put everybody together and say, how can we create those universalities of distribution within the region to start with? and be a part of it, so that we are available online, we are available at the same click at which the consumer is clicking everything else. It is the universality of distribution which is the biggest threat in the business. It is the same in e-commerce today, it's the same in media today.
Okay, but so Facebook has Facebook Watch on a trial period in the US.
They will go all out very soon.
They're going to come everywhere.
Absolutely.
So it looks like they're moving faster. So we get to the point where now we have satellite, which we always complain that DTH doesn't allow us to address individual markets. True, but at the same time, it's also a fairly non-gatekeeper type environment, politics notwithstanding. So if we get to the point where a Facebook Watch page is the #1 place for people to consume content and you need eyeballs because you're an advertising-supported business, is it inevitable that we get to the point where we have to rely on them because they now are the biggest?
If we don't act soon, which comes back to your point of collaboration, then we will have to, some way or other, start giving in pieces and bits to that audience. So we need to come together soon, and earlier the better.
Sam, do you see any difference in how, whether it's broadband penetration, whether it's consumer habits, do you see any difference in the market here that gives us more time to figure out how we're going to counter this as an industry, or do you see this?
I'd say we probably have less time here because the market it doesn't have the degree of regulation that most other markets will have. If you look at France, they have clear constraints on content. Other markets have got together and are trying to regulate the entrance of, or have strict rules on foreign entrance. This market has been anarchic in the past. And one of the things you can read in what has happened across the region in the last weeks and months is that the various states are trying to get hold of media, and you can foresee that there will be a stronger regulatory environment in the future than there will have been in the past. I would predict that one of the consequences of that is that they will try and then become more protectionist. So I think we have. If that doesn't happen, then we've got no time at all, because FANG can come here and dump cheap advertising on this market. If the regulators start behaving and try and be more protectionist, then there's some more time.
If they do become more protectionist, is it then inevitable that they also try to become protectionist about the digital platforms or the internet as a form of distribution? So let's say if you're facing a degree of protectionism in DTH or in the regular means of transmission, is digital going to be a safe harbor for you think, or it's only a matter of time because before that also is an area?
Too many steps ahead. I mean, I'm currently looking on a 24-hour basis, and we will predict forward. One of the things we try and do at NBC is you start from content. You're not quite sure which platform will win over the longer term, but you try and make sure that it will work on any particular platform, and not to get too exposed to any company or companies or technologies who can stop you. And we, again, have seen what happens when you become too exposed to one or the other.
Have any of you made, in this region, content specifically for a nonlinear platform? No.
For nonlinear
content for digital distribution, or made only for distribution on digital or short-form content, or anything different from broadcast?
Yeah, we've got something which will be rolling out in the next few weeks, which we'll talk about when that happens. But
okay.
Yeah, short-form content for the Wavo platform.
Okay, so is that something that's designed as a marketing tool for Wavo to get more subscribers? Is it designed as a way to? Is it basically a tool to get subscribers, or is it you experimenting in how your future content production may go?
A bit of both, to be honest. I'm not quite sure exactly how it will pan out, but I think the opportunity exists for us to try and bring that sort of content into the platform, because the types of demographic that we're going after is consuming content like that in different on different platforms and through different outlets, and I think that bringing it into Wavo is an interesting experiment for us to see how that develops.
Martin, if you can talk. Can you hear me? Yeah. If you can talk about Wavo, is it a defensive play against the pure OTT, the Flixes of the world that are coming here? Is it the start of where you foresee the majority of your subscribers being in the medium term or the near term? How do you characterize it? Because there's been a big shift in how OSN treats OTT, whereas before it was a secondary product. Now it stands on its own. It stands on its own as a very attractive product.
I think I've been on record as saying that I believe that the majority of our subscribers will come from the OTT side of our business within a 3 to 5 year period.
How do the rest of you feel about that prediction from your businesses?
No, 3 to 5 years, obviously. I mean, at the end of the day, this classic goldfish attention span story. Content is getting smaller because attention spans are smaller. People, like I mentioned earlier, don't want to possibly look at what we are now termed as traditional channels, linear channels. Fact still remains 3 to 5 years is an outside guess. The whole cord cutter story is something, is not legend, it's not myth, it's reality, it's now. So content, paying for content, of course, is going to be the norm, without a doubt. There's no other way to recover the money that is spent on creating that content.
Should I be worried if I'm Arab set?
From a pure distribution angle, possibly, but as a technology provider and a solutions provider, I'm not too sure about that.
Yeah.
To answer that, we launched Fox Plus as a service in Southeast Asia. We started with the Philippines, and we have rolled it up and ramped it up in about 5-7 markets. And one of the first things that we have now realized, and I would say that was very intelligent of us to have realized it, even if later, is the content play on that platform is not only going to be the 20,000, 25,000 hours of programming that we have on that platform. Because we have massive amount of programming in Southeast Asia, including sports, F1, golf, whatever. And there is now a determined and concerted move to create content for that platform, especially coming from the likes of Hong Kong and Taiwan, where a lot of Chinese, Cantonese, Mandarin content is consumed online specific to those platforms. So that's one big revolution that, there could be a consumption of that 20,000 hours, but you need to quickly localize and adapt and create content for Fox Plus as a platform. Yeah.
So my take is, it all sounds great. Today, at the end of the day, hands down, because of the fact that OSN has the largest product offering, the natural tendency of a consumer is going to be to go for the biggest pack. So anybody who can offer maximum content, paid, free, whatever it may be. You're seeing that on YouTube when people say, it has the maximum content, I will go there. So every time a particular content owner says, I will create a pack which is only my content, it's a short-term strategy. It's, as you were terming, it's a marketing strategy. It's not going to be long-term. Unless you are part of a platform that offers maximum content, you cannot be, you can't be sustainable.
The counter to that is that we've seen in some places like the US, but yes, different market, I know, but we've seen places where there was an expectation that people would pick only one OTT product, and they actually ended up picking 2 or 3 on average. Sure. Do you foresee, are we less optimistic about that happening here because of the propensity to pay is not there historically, or do we think it's going to be the same here?
I think there would be at least, I'm pretty certain I know enough number of people who both have one of the foreign players and a Wavo package at home. So again, it's the have money, shall spend. I can afford more, that's about it. That's the natural tendency for any human. You think you've made it because you've got the maximum number of cars, watches, suits, whatever it is. So content choices, you think you've made it because you can afford more. So for anybody to say, even if it's a Netflix, for them to say that, yes, we're spending $6 billion of content, etc., it's, they're barely about 10% of what I think OSN has got right now. Correct me if I'm wrong. In terms of number of subs, they're possibly about 10% of what OSN's got in the market.
That was a good question.
I know that.
Thank you for your support.
I know that the guys from Do noted that there was a massive drop-off in VPN usage when Netflix officially launched in the region. So whether they had how many legal subscribers they've got now versus how many illegal subscribers they had before, I'm not sure. But the fact of life is that they provide a great service, and I'm not sitting here saying that we're going to beat Netflix, and I don't think that's an aim that anybody should have. It's about providing a complementary service. They provide a great service, we can provide a great service. Those two services can sit alongside each other and provide consumer with the full array of content that they want to watch. I don't see that it's not a question of trying to say that you've got to keep them out of your subscribers' life, because I think that's just unrealistic given their size and the scale and the reach that they've got.
So is it the fact that the OTT products tend to have a lower price point that makes us more optimistic about uptake compared to what sort of traditional pay TV has been able to achieve before? Because the piracy issue you're talking about is even more so prevalent on digital, right? So why are we more optimistic about how far OTT can penetrate in terms of a subs base compared to traditional pay TV, or is it going to be facing the same DTH challenges?
For us, it's just a question of demographics. We just look at the percentage of the region that's under the age of 30, 35. We look at how they behave, and it's quite different in terms of consumption. And I think that moving forward, it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we provide products that have a great user experience, great content accessibility, content discoverability, that provide original and exclusive content, and that they are extremely affordable, as well as easy to use and easy to access. And if we do that, then I think that's the sort of services that those people are looking for in the future. And if we want to be a true mass market proposition, not just for us, but for paid-for content that for all the gentlemen up here, then those, I think, are the rules that all of us have to follow if we're going to expand beyond where we are.
Yep. Just have a point to add, and I'm going to sort of try and weave 2-3 different different examples on this. So on the whole OTT space, I'll give the example of something my group is doing in India. We have a service in India called Voot, which is an AVOD play. It basically collates about 40,000-45,000 hours of content that we run across our group channels. In addition, we are also creating content specifically for Voot for digital, about 15 odd shows, which are slightly more risque, more short format, deal with slightly bolder subjects, and so on and so forth. So Voot has been in existence for about a year and a half now, with about 40,000-45,000 hours of content. We get roughly about 25,000 25 million monthly active users and about 3.5 daily active users a day. But the bulk of the content consumption, about 90% of content consumption would really come from the top 5% of content. So the point really is that, that's really something that OTT players have really been able to recognize and have been able to really tap into. I think we've all built traditional pay TV models basis multiplexing of channels and basis large bouquets at large ARPUs. But the fact is that anyone in the pay TV business would agree that 70-80% of viewership would anyway come from the top 10% or 15% marquee brands, right? But we've all the whole business has been built on the back of huge multiplexing and large ARPUs, etc. I think one of the big things that OTT players are bringing to the table is that apart from the fact that there is ease and convenience of content, you can consume as much as you want, but it's also that the ARPUs are lower, it's far easy to subscribe, the lock-ins are lesser, and in an ideal world, OTT would simply add to linear content consumption because your family viewing would be linear and then everyone would consume content on their own on their own devices. But the fact is that given how people consume content, OTT will take away from linear consumption. OTT will take away from from our traditional pay TV platforms, and that's something that all of us need to be cognizant about. I think we're not, at least the way we look at it, we are no longer in the channels business, and we should try and get out of the channels business over a period of time and truly be in the content business.
Sam, are you getting out of the channels business anytime soon?
No, again, the TV free-to-air advertising market is strong. We're not seeing the declines that have yet been seen elsewhere in the world. So we would be fools to give up on this market. What we have done is invest in all the things we've been talking about. But as I mentioned before, there is a positive story on free-to-air TV in the region. And linear TV continues to be very popular. It may sound like a dinosaur and less cool and less millennial by saying so, but it's an economic fact, and we will continue to make lots of money out of it for the next few years.
I want to go back to...
There's no argument to that. Make lots of money over... There's no argument to that.
You can't agree with what you just said, because you just said the opposite now. That doesn't work. Tari, I want to go back to my favorite topic of the day, which is collaboration. We were talking about the fact that in Europe, Channel 4, ProSieben, and some other FTA broadcasters have basically gotten together and done an advertising alliance. We've had Mukund talk about doing sales for other platforms. You are you are his client in terms of assets. Do you see this as something that will grow in the region going forward?
I mean, hopefully it follows pretty much all the conversations we've been having today. I just read this article right before coming here. It's Channel 4, ProSieben, Mediaset, and TF1 in France, which is pretty much a massive collaboration against Google and Facebook. But if I want to speak about Turner's mentality and how we perceive our steps of business planning, I think we're very research heavy. So before moving into anything, whether it's collaboration or whether it's platform based or not, we tend to put the consumer at the center. We tend to think of who is our niche market or who is our mass market, and we really spend a lot of time analyzing how to reach that consumer. And since we're premium content developers, right, there is short-form content everywhere, and short-form content is getting a lot of traction, but it has a short life of monetization as well. So if you really want to be in the business of monetizing content and premium content, you got to know who you're after. You got to know that you're super serving your consumer, that you actually know what to deliver to them, whether it's free-to-air, whether it's pay, whether it's OTT, whether it's linear. It really doesn't matter to us. I think as long as we create the absolute best form of content that we genuinely believe will reach our consumers the way we want to reach them.
It does matter where the advertising income against that content is coming through, because some people it will come through straight to your pocket, some people 70% of it will come through, for others 55% of it will come through. So you can't say I don't care how I reach consumers. There is an economic difference to you.
The truth is that the technology is changing, and the platforms are changing, and the mediums are changing, but the content remains king. So everybody is going to
get through it without saying that.
So everybody is coming after content, whether it's Facebook's or Google or Amazon.
But to you as a content owner, going through a YouTube that gives you 55% of ad spend, or going through a rep that gives you 70%, or going direct that gives you 100% is the same? Cannot.
It's not the same, but it's a natural evolution of how consumers are viewing the content. It doesn't mean the content will expire. It just means that we're going through an adjustment period. That adjustment period will phase out, and eventually premium content developers will stay, regardless of the technology that delivers that.
I think the content industry is in the right place right now. It's the best place to be if you are a content provider, because opportunities, as Tariq are saying, are growing and abounding. And yeah, in many ways, platforms are substantially secondary to us in many ways. Because you recently heard, and don't ask me too many questions because I don't know the answers, even Disney wanting to kind of talk with Fox. Now, what is that? That clearly tells you that there is an amalgamation of content producing outfits at the top. They may be in their B2C segments on their own and so on and so forth. But that's where the whole world is going towards. I mean, it's all about content at the end of the day.
It's good if you're a content production powerhouse. If you're somebody who's more used to aggregating channels and content from different sources, that's not so comforting, right?
Yes and no.
Yeah, but a platform too is evolving. I mean, if you're referring to a platform provider, they too are evolving into providing content. So at the end of the day, it goes back to what we've all been talking about, the fact that content is the only way to reach the eyeball. irrespective of who takes what cut, because there are different revenue models for every cut. The content can be monetized and re-amortized based on which model you go through. So I don't think that is a...
I want to leave some time for questions, so, but before that, I would like each of you to, if you would like, take the opportunity to sort of leave the audience with one final sentence that you want to leave them with. Not marketing for any of your channels, which are all wonderful and all your services are great, but your perspective on the industry in the next 2 or 3 years.
So 2017 has been a tough year. We are starting to see signs of recovery. We've actually had our busiest week last week in our own commercial department, which was a great sign, particularly given the week that we've had. So I think there will be that we will start to see an upturn in 2018, and this will inject some more enthusiasm back into the free-to-air market, and also enable us to invest more quickly in a lot of the new things which will come after that.
Localization, multi-platform solutions, reach the consumer, get the eyeball. You get the eyeball, you get the money.
Many things like the animal we stand for. So National Geographic, that's a surprise packet for us. Getting into licensing, merchandising, and travel business in a very big way around the world, not only here. So that is a big complementary business to us. Kids, localization, we want to get into pay television more and more. I think all said and done, channels, platforms may say they have 100 channels and all of that, but we all know how many of them consumers watch. So there is still a lot you can do on pay TV platforms as differentiated content. We will stay invested in that. Yeah. And Fox Plus.
He said no marketing.
No, I'm just launching it. That's post-launching. It's marketing done already.
Well, I think for us, the big theme has been about localization and how do you diversify our revenue streams? For every single bit of our content and our brands, how do you sweat it and how do you extract maximum value from it? Both in terms of your traditional content flow through platforms, through advertisers, through delivering experiences directly to consumers, events. That's really been the theme for us, and I think that's likely to continue over the next 2 years.
Our focus in 2018 is going to be the same as it has been through 2017, which is just to grow our distribution, grow our reach as far as possible, and please download Weibo now and enjoy the app.
Go to www.
Naughty children, you're not following your instructions.
You may need to speak up a little bit.
Okay, sorry, I'm happy to repeat the last bit. Download Weibo and enjoy the app. There you go.
I'll be consistent. I think for us, we genuinely believe we are in markets of high growth. So whether it's in Turkey, whether it's in the Middle East, we continue to grow our business year on year, and we'll continue to invest. So we'll bring more products, we'll bring more linear offerings, we'll bring OTT services, and hopefully we'll continue to deliver on what we promise.
So we have 11 minutes for questions. Any questions out there?
Oh, there's one from Mustafa.
There's one on the right also.
Okay, I'm going to raise you.
Hi, you talked about cooperation for survival. And I think one of the issues we face here in this area is the political issues, which makes it very difficult to cooperate. I mean, we have the case of 3 founding members who founded 3 of the major networks in custody for political reasons. A few months ago, we had government unofficially encouraging their population to go piracy, to watch content that comes from another region, from another country that they are politically not in agreement with. So these can make it very difficult to cooperate in our area. We have cases with ART when we actually, 10 years ago, when we sat with when we had sports and we sat out with other sport networks and said, let's cooperate.
What's the question, please?
The question is how, if we can't cooperate politically, it's going to be difficult to cooperate in the media.
I think everyone has professed a willingness to cooperate, so there doesn't seem to be any political issues on this panel, if I may answer on your behalf, unless anyone would like to give any other opinion.
Well, as long as that doesn't constitute a Labour vote, then it's fine.
We left it to the
As
staff.
long as? Oh, Labour. Oh, okay. UK politics have come into it.
Any other questions? Oh, yeah.
There was a gentleman here on the right.
Hi. Badia Fatwa Creative Venture. Taking into consideration the challenges that have been identified by the speakers, and the affirmation as well that you continue to offer and move forward robustly. In reality, how do you foresee managing the content offering? Are you going to be investing more in premium content going forward, or keep exercising? Some of you are already exercising budget cuts and mitigating the risks, which is a sensible thing to do in the current climate situation. But going forward, how do you see, what is your approach in terms of your content strategy in striking this delicate balance between, being cost effective or cost efficient and being, maintaining your premium content offering for the viewers?
So are you willing to basically co-produce together?
So, may I? Please. So there's 3 models that our company is working on. There's content being created in another geography for the expatriate people here that we monetize. There is local production that we are doing for the Arab audience. We monetize that. And we also create content, say, for radio. Short form content, which engages, and you monetize that. So it isn't really, I mean, if I can understand your question, it isn't a really one answer to fit all the content needs of multiple types of audiences. So it depends on what type of audience you're serving at that particular point in time. And it doesn't mean that any broadcaster here is only serving one type of audience. The gentleman on my left mentioned that he's doing activations. That is serving one type of audience. There are Arab audiences that are being served any which way. So I think it depends on what type of audience and what time of your product cycle you're actually serving. I don't know if have I kind of clarified what you were asking?
I think the question was more about whether they're willing to co-produce together, correct?
Don't worry, Badia, we'll still buy from you. Look, I think the prognosis for premium Arabic content is actually very strong. NBC represents a chunk of the market. It's been no secret that we have been suffering from long-term contracts and output deals of international content. They are now coming to an end. And we're looking forward to that because that will free up more money to go and invest in the kind of content that actually generates ratings and excitement and enthusiasm from our audience. So going forward, our thrust is to invest more in premium Arabic content. And if it's not us, there are plenty of other people doing the same thing as well. So beware.
I think the studios in Middle East are as busy as they were in the last 3-4 years. So I don't see any budget cuts happening as far as programming or content is concerned.
I think the issue has been in Egypt. So I think Egypt has suffered a traumatic year, but that's been about the change in ownership. Now that looks like that trauma has now finished, and ownership has changed. And I would suspect that those channels now will start buying and putting more money back into the marketplace, because I think a lot of the producers in Egypt were suffering when channels in the midst of being acquired or acquiring were not paying the producers. And that sucked a lot of money out of the market and caused a big problem. I think that process is now finished. And again, so I think there's a positive outlook for 18.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Nicholas from Citrus TV. I want to thank all the panelists for this great panel. It was very enriching for me. One of the questions I would have for the free-to-air players in this room are, and I believe, and I'm a strong believer, obviously, of the future of free-to-air. I believe this market is, as we said, doesn't like necessarily to pay for content. But one of the issues of the currently free-to-air model is the, I would call, bad customer experience. The people are able to consume the content. So when we look at free-to-air, most houses, especially in Saudi, will have the standard set-top box where the channels are actually put into transponder by a transponder channel. And we saw that with NBC, who have grouped all their channels on their own transponder to offer a bit better, at least for all the NBC channels, experience. But when we look at children who like, let's say, all the cartoons, all the channels are very far away from each other. Similarly from news, depending on the transponder you are, you have to switch from one transponder to another. So the customer experience on free-to-air today is not seamless. It's very, let's say, annoying to watch free-to-air TV in our region with the number of channels, with the number of satellite, and the duplication in the channels. So the question is that should the collaboration not be there between them to try to group the way it is done on IPTV or on pay TV, all the news channels together, all the series together, all the movies together, to improve the customer experience and increase the viewership for the channels.
Who would like to take that?
I think after we've collaborated on the OTT, then we can all collaborate on the menu list, as long as NBC are the top 20.
On EPG.
I think we have time for one more, or you want?
Yes, we do have. We have opportunity for questions, no comments. Please, questions.
You're on the spotlight, Nick. Make it brief and succinct.
Thank you for a fantastic panel, as always. So the market has been anarchic for years. Without proper regulation, Fanga will dump cheap advertising into it. The market is expected to get more heavily regulated, but as a result, it will become more protectionist, and we abhor joint ventures. So we're still painting a positive picture, though. The last 15, 20 minutes, we've been very, very sunny outlook. So what exactly is going to change beyond the protectionist? Where's the sunrise going to come from? And I guess I appreciate that this is possibly a bit more of a free-to-air, apologies to the pay TV guys, question, but it is applicable to everybody. Where's the sun going to come up?
I think the audience is going to get bored of me saying why I'm so positive about the free-to-air market, but I'm happy to do it again if you want. I believe it.
I'm sorry, I maybe might be specific then. So in a protectionist environment, which has been predicted, where we don't want to have JVs because we abhor them, like, where's the... How's it going to work? What's going to...
I think you're conflagrating all sorts of comments, which is a nice way to conclude. But the point about regulation is the market has not been regulated at all in the past. I mean, it evolved because it was on satellite, because it didn't have to ask the permission of any Minister of Information. It was just beamed in from anywhere. That, as we move, that is now changing, I think. And with the evolution of intelligent set-top boxes and the clear ambition to try and control those boxes, I think the various ministries will try and get that back. And I'm not sure how that changes our life. So I'm not sure how it will impact us, but it will impact us. I don't think it changes the prognosis for the economics of this market. Channels which drive high viewership will get their share of the advertising market. So that will continue. But I think there will be more political regulation.
But Nick, I don't think people said joint ventures are out. I think we were addressing the fact that rather than get into the semantics of what a joint venture is, the idea is to work together faster. So rather than get caught into the semantics part, that's the only part about the joint venture I think I mentioned.
And just to add to that, Nick's point, I think it's also imperative upon us, be it free-to-air, pay, I think it's all in the mind, not in the minds of the consumer, that we exhort the telco industry to stand up and start looking at operations within their backyard. They may have some kick-ass IPTV operations in certain countries, We largely know that MENA is nothing but a set of 24 odd countries, if I get the number right. And most of the growth of any kind could come, a large part of the growth could come if the telcos start putting together their video strategies, which is not happening in markets beyond, say, UAE or Saudi to a certain extent, and that's about it. I mean, Egypt, 90 million, 80 million odd people, how are they being served? And this is no fight between, again, I say, pay or free to air. It's generally to reach the consumer, what are you being left with? You go to the three markets of Morocco, Algeria, Tunis, you know what the conditions are. So the telco industry too needs to kind of ramp up, and they have all of it there. The broadband is laid probably, the technology is there, but that wherewithal to kind of put together a video strategy is also hampering the growth, and hence for anybody to come together.
I did think we could take another question, but actually it's 4:30, and I appreciate that some of you have to go to a meeting. So I think we will conclude this, Kareem, if you will conclude it.
Thank you very much. Please put your hands together for our panel.